He was getting dangerous.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, no, that is. That's a very hard thing. A little firefall to get us going here on a Tuesday morning. It is still pretty cold outside and nasty, and I'm sure if you are not careful, there are places where you can slip and go boom here today. So don't do that for us today. Be very careful, get where you need to go, and make sure you keep it here on the Q96.5 FM. As we always do on Tuesday morning, we start out with a little conversation about education around Northwest Ohio, and I've got to tell you, I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since Mr. Jim Bellamy said, you know what, we need to get Dr. Tom Stuckey on before we let loose of him, because there are secrets there and stories there that we need to record before we let loose of him. And Tom, it's wonderful to have you here. Dr. Tom Stuckey with Northwest State Community College.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not sure about those stories. They may best just stay hidden or buried.
No doubt about that. That might be a good idea. How's that?
Yeah.
But welcome. You know, it has
Thank you.
been a wonderful, how many years now with Northwest?
I was there for 10, then I left for 9, and now I've been back for 18.
Okay, so 28 years.
28 years at the college.
Wow, that is totally amazing.
Yes, I had the pleasure of working with all the presidents. And I understand the current one they have is a real ornery one.
That's what I've been told too. You know, I've heard that same exact story, Tom.
So it's a great place. We all work together, and hopefully each employee and each student can say, I'm having fun while I'm learning.
Yeah. And I think that is the case for most everybody that goes there. Let's get it off the college right now. Let's take it back, because we've got a little time to talk, and I always like to dig back a little bit deeper. You're from where originally?
From West Unity, just south of town. I graduated from Hilltop High School.
Okay.
And then went to Goshen College for my bachelor's and taught school in Iowa for 2 years, and then came back and worked at Fort County.
Wow. So was that the intent, to be a teacher when you were going to college?
Actually, I have a dual degree in education and business. Okay. I could never make up my mind if I wanted to teach or if I wanted to be in business. So my first job in Iowa, I was a part-time teacher and the school's business manager.
I'll be darned.
So. And
at that point in time, did that shape the direction for you from that point forward? Did you pick one, I guess is what I'm asking? Did in that very first job you say, man, this business part is really attractive to me and I'm not sure I want to be a teacher, or did it take longer than that?
You know, when I grow up, I'm going to make that decision. Right now, both I enjoy, and one gives energy to the other.
Yeah.
You know, it gives a balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so how then did you get to be the president of the college? You came back, you went to Fort County.
Right. And from Fort County, I then went into business at Archibald Equipment, which was the Case IH dealership north of town.
Okay.
And worked there for several years. And then we came along with the farm crisis. And the college had asked if I'd be willing to start teaching some evening accounting classes. And so during that time, when the farm crisis was in place, I would work at Archibald Equipment during the day and teach during the evening.
Wow.
And then at retirement, I was asked to be the dean of business. And from that became the academic dean, or the vice president of academics.
Wow.
So.
Fantastic. And from there, then you left. You were there for 10 years, and then that's when you left at that point in time.
At that point,
that position,
I left and went to the Mennonite Board of Education, which owns and operates the Mennonite colleges and seminaries across the United States.
I'll be darned.
There, I was vice president in charge of finance.
And where was that? Was that still here? Were you able to live here, or did you?
We continued to live here. The job was in Elkhart.
Okay.
My wife was teaching in West Unity, and our sons, and so I was gone 4 days a week. Had a schedule of 4 10s and stayed overnight 2 nights, and it's amazing what you can do if you have a mind to do it.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is. And it probably disrupted the household some, but not as dramatically as picking everybody up and moving them. At that
I was told I disrupted the household when I came back on the weekends. But the good thing is I think my sons grew up a little faster because they did some things that Dad would have done.
Yeah.
And I remember my youngest son buying a car, and he said at one point, "This is how much money I have, and if I can't buy it, that's okay." And he got a call from the dealership in 24 hours and said, "The car is yours. We just were checking to see if there was any more money."
I'll be darned.
And he said, "No, this is all I have. I don't, you know."
So he got his first life lesson there in buying an automobile without Dad around, and a good one there too. It sounded like.
Yeah, and you know, at age 17, that was a valuable lesson.
Yeah,
But you also then had to take care of the car.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
It seems to me that, and I know one of your sons, and he went the business way over here. My wife and he are good friends. I don't know the rest of the family. What's the family makeup?
We have 2 sons, and each of our 2 sons have 2 sons. So my wife thought there was going to be a daughter or a granddaughter somewhere in the mix, and that never happened. But the interesting thing, I think, about our 2 sons is not having daughters. The oldest son was a cookie maker.
Okay.
And his cookies, if they're chocolate chip, they were anything but chocolate chip because he always experimented.
Okay.
He now works for Xerox, has a PhD in physics, and he's in charge of a lot of their development.
I'll be darned.
And our younger son was the pie maker, and his pies were always perfect, and they were always precise. And he is the accountant.
That's amazing. Now, cooking a big portion of the Stuckey family when they were growing up. I mean, did you guys cook a lot together?
Well, one of the family traditions we have is calling the entire family now, which is also nephews and nieces in the fall, to make about 8 to 10 bushels of apples into applesauce.
Wow,
so it's just a fun day.
Yeah.
And everybody takes home more applesauce than what they need. But yeah, it's a way of bringing family together. It's part of the tradition.
Is that passed on? Is this something that your parents did, the grandparents did, or is this?
This is new. So I think probably my grandparents' day it would have been butchering day, if I understand correctly some of the things they talk about. Yes.
Yeah. Family have its roots forever right here in Northwest Ohio, as long as they've been in the country. Is that
yes?
That where you're from?
In 1835, the Stuckeys migrated from Alsace-Lorraine, which was on the border of France and Germany, and so there's been Stuckey families here for a few years.
All right, all right. And you know what? That's always been the one. And I got to admit to you that whenever we get together, there are Stuckeys and Stuckeys, okay, all over the world, okay? And I always have to sit here, and I think I always pick it wrong when I sit down and talk to you. Is it Tom Stuckey or Tom Stuckey?
I answer to both.
I knew you did, but originally the name to the family was a Stuckey.
Stuckey, yeah.
I'm a Funderburg, and it was a Vonderburg when they first came to the country. Okay,
but there's many spellings of a very simple name without the E, without the EY.
Yeah.
Depends on what part of the country you're from, how it's pronounced.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I think that's something that everybody looks at, and you know, we do a lot of basketball games, and as you move around the country and you get different young ladies or young men who are playing basketball who come from a different area, it's a different pronunciation, and sometimes even totally off the rails, where you're like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, that was one of the joys of being a teacher. Now, how do I pronounce your name? Because parents had unique ways of spelling the name and or the pronunciation.
Yeah. The Mennonite, how did you leave the Mennonite Association then to come back to Northwest Ohio? How did that happen?
Well, I got a call from the president, and he said, Tom, I've heard good things about you, and would you be interested in coming back as the finance person? And I said, oh, I don't think so. And he said, no, now you need to talk to me. You need to listen to me. So I did, and he was right. It was a good move. So I have Larry McDougall to thank for inviting me back.
You know what? What that was? When? What was the year that you came back?
In 98.
98. Okay. Because I know I came up here in 96
Okay.
and really got involved in 97. All
Mhm.
right. And Larry McDougall is a name that I do remember, although
Yes.
it's been a long time ago since I
Yes.
could say and I can't pull him up in my memory right now. But that is a very familiar name. As one of the first names that I recognized when I got back up here into town. A little background on Larry then.
Larry was the dean, I think is the title, at the CompTech, which is the 2-year community college at the University of Toledo.
Okay.
And when the position came open at Northwest, the position of president, he applied and was selected.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and he was president for 11 years.
That seems to be a pretty decent tenure for most of these jobs. If you go 10 or so years, you've done pretty well. And if you get to 18, it's like, wow, how did he pull that one off, huh?
That is correct. The current tenure for a college president is 5 years.
Yes.
So if you go beyond 10, or excuse me, beyond 5, you've beaten the average.
Yes.
So,
And I can, yeah, all right. Now, describe to me at that point in time when you got to 98, okay, what the college looked like. Because it's nowhere the same today as it was back then.
that is correct. When Larry would have started, there would have been the first building, the A building, and the atrium, and the B and the C wings. Larry received a call from the governor, Voinovich, and said, what would you do with $7 million? And he said, we would build an engineering building. And that is that whole wing now going towards the Four-County Career Center. And I'm so thankful that that was put in place. And when that building was built, it was built so that it had various wings added to it as the college grew. And now we have added on 2 sides of that, we've used that wing option, which is a great savings because the facility, as far as restrooms, heating, air conditioning, were all in place.
Wow. Yes.
Somebody was thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice to have somebody? I mean, and that's you know the difference between an excellent organization and an average organization often becomes those types of things.
Yes.
Don't you think?
In fact, we're doing a renovation where the welding area has grown so much that we need to separate the welding from the machine shop. And so this spring we're currently going out for bids, and it'll be the growth in both of those areas. But it'll stay the same footprint will not enlarge, but we'll be using the facility differently.
Wow, that's
So,
amazing.
Yeah, and that's part of community college. What does the community need? How do you address those needs, and how do you help people become employed?
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, you know what? To keep me employed, I have to play commercials every now and then.
That's good.
So I need to do that right now. I've got Dr. Tom Stuckey with me at this point in time from Northwest State Community College, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the college itself, where it's at right now, where it's heading, and then hopefully we're going to keep you around for about an hour. You've got the Q 96.5 FM.
Trivial Pursuit. Well, it's time. Sleep better, you need a beauty rest. Find a retailer.
All right, back here on a Tuesday morning with Dr. Tom Stuckey. It's about 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we're going to get back into discussing a little bit about it, the college, Northwest State Community College, and where they are right now and where they're heading. I think everybody knows that Dr. Tom is going to retire coming up here pretty soon, which is, I'm sure, as for you and probably for me here shortly, hard to believe that it could possibly have been that many years, and they've gone probably as fast for you as they have for me, have they not?
That is true. We always hear that as you get older, time goes much more quickly, and it's right. It does, or so it seems.
It sure does. I mean, there's just, I guess it's all the responsibility you have, the things that you worry about that maybe as a younger person you could actually sit back and relax for a few hours and the time went slower. I've never figured that out. Have you?
Well, you know, when we were 5 and you were waiting for Christmas, if it was a half a year away, that was like 20% of your life waiting for Christmas.
Yes.
Now, when Christmas is 5-6 months away, that's only 3 or 4% of your life. So it's a different perspective.
You know what? That's kind of thinking about it from a mathematician's standpoint there. That might work.
Yeah, how quickly time has moved as we look back.
Yes.
And when you're younger, you don't have that reference.
Yes, that might be right. You know, but it goes faster. My grandmother was right, man. She told me that she never lied to me. She always said that back in the day, and she was 100% correct.
And she'd be so proud that you're now acknowledging that.
Exactly. Finally, my grandfather would finally say, the little bullheaded booger, you know, he just finally got it. It took him 60 plus years to get there, but he's there.
He's there. That's finally the important thing. That's right. Oh.
What are you going to do when you retire? Have you thought about that?
Well, I do hope to do some teaching. I do want to stay in the community. I do want to be actively involved. And I'll be doing some volunteering work, but I'd like to select what area that is.
Sure.
And I'm not in a big hurry to make that decision.
Yeah, no doubt. Last day on the job is when?
Probably June 30th.
Okay.
Depends on the new president when he or she's ready to start, and I'll just coordinate my schedule with that person.
Yeah. Okay.
So it could be a little earlier, it could be a little later, but the goal is July or June 30th.
Sure. And a nice smooth transition, I'm sure, is priority number one.
That is correct.
Yeah, no doubt about that. For anybody that doesn't follow this, where are we at in that process, and how does that happen? Who picks your replacement? Tom Stuckey doesn't just say, okay, you know what, I think Jim Bellamy would be a good choice. Yeah.
Well, Jim might be, yes. The president is hired by the board and reports to the board.
Okay.
And we were fortunate. We had 40-some applicants, and the search committee, which was appointed by the board, made up of some board members, some faculty and staff, a community member, processed through those and eliminated about half, and then the other half were taken very seriously.
Yes.
And so they worked that group down, going over resumes. It's amazing what you can do on a Google search, find out a lot about people.
It is amazing.
And interviewed then 6 individuals.
I'll be darned.
So,
you know, that's interesting, because I would think that you really are looking for a specific person. It doesn't have to be a man or a woman necessarily, either one.
That is correct.
But I would think there are traits and even more a gut feeling at times as to whether this person is a good fit for where they're going to take this job.
And Northwest State is a community college in a rural community, and we need to keep that in mind. What is the responsibilities of a community college that serves the 6 counties in Northwest Ohio?
Yes, yes. You have no say-so whatsoever? They don't come to you and say, Tom, how about it? Do you lean towards this one or that one?
Well, the way I look at it, the new president will report to the board, and the board needs to make that decision so they can support that person as that person begins their tenure as president.
Yeah.
So, no, I do not have a voice in this.
You know what? Having been a person who left a job and that is still operating in your backyard, I think that's critical. I really do. I think you give it the best that you have for the time that you have, and then you walk away and you have to let that succession happen.
Yes. And at different times, institutions, be they college or businesses, need different leadership. And so what is the type of leadership this organization needs for the next 10 years?
Yes.
And that's the type of person we're looking for.
So when they picked Tom Stuckey as the new president, okay, how many years ago? You've been there 18, but you started as on the financial side. When were you named president then?
In '07.
Okay. So in '06, when they were going through this process and trying to figure this out, what were they looking for that led them to Tom Stuckey?
It's a fair question. I wish I could sum that up in 3 words.
Well, we've got plenty of time. That's the neat thing about the program we do in here. We get a chance to talk.
Well, you know, we started out by saying I started not knowing if I was a teacher or if I enjoyed business. And I think back of my first 2 years of being a part-time teacher and the school business manager. And I think they were looking for someone that knew finances, was able to squeeze every nickel for what it could and get the best we could, and also a person that could bring the community together.
Yes.
And we have a lot of different players in our community, and it's important that each village and each town and each subset feels a part of the community. And we work closely with each of the high schools because you build enrollment one student at a time.
Yes.
So how do we slow things down and do it intentionally, but do it very well?
Yes.
And that was one of the goals.
What's been the most difficult part of the job?
It's a good question. It's the balancing. Community college has 2 or 3 things going for it at all times. And at any one time, one may be stronger than the other. What I'm playing with right now is we have the career track, the manufacturing, workforce development, and that is literally more than 50% of our enrollment. When I started, that was not true. It was students that had recently graduated from high school that were either there to earn an associate's degree or get their first year or 2 and then go on for their bachelor's. So the population has changed from like a 19, 20-year-old to our average age of 30. And it's a lot of 1-year certificates. So you might get a certificate in welding or in CNC operation or in truck driving.
Sure.
Electrical. We do a lot of work with different unions and helping them become more certifiable, and also raising the level of attainment, educational attainment.
Yeah, yeah. The perspective from a student point of view, from 2007 to 2018, how has their perspective changed?
That's a good question. I think what I would understand, or how I would answer that, it's become a lot more focused on a job. Is there employment after I have completed this work, this education?
Okay.
And what is the pay range of that new job? And will it be enough to sustain the person, the student, and also his or her family?
Yes.
That is very critical.
Yeah. You know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, Tom, and he brought up a very interesting point, and I thought it was worth dealing with, and I wondered what you thought of it. His point was, we take a 17 or 18-year-old person who believe they're very mature, and in a lot of ways they are, okay? And we throw them into a 4-year curriculum at a college, okay? And now all of a sudden they're 21 or 22 years of age, and they're still pretty young. When we were 21, we thought we were old guys and very wise and streetwise, but reality, when we look back, we now understand that maybe at 24 or 25 we're better focused for a job, or 27 or 28 we're more focused for a job. And his thought and was that, you know, shouldn't we maybe try to take some of these folks and do something with them, okay, and allow them to mature a little more before we force them in, and not in your case, but if you go to a regular college and you spend $25,000 a year and you really don't know where you're going, and you come out with $100,000 in debt, and now you have to rethink everything, should we not be addressing that at that 17 or 18-year-old level and saying, there better be should be another path for that person for a while?
I would agree. We have not, we being education, and I won't throw anyone under the bus here, but we as educators have not opened up the eyes of students into potential career paths and given them the opportunity to try that. I'm always uncomfortable when I hear someone say, I spent 4 years learning to be an elementary teacher, and I was there for 6 days, and I realized I hated it.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Why wasn't that experience, that person allowed to have that experience, even as a high school student, helping out in a first or second grade, getting some interaction with students, so that he or she had an idea that, yeah, this is for me. The other part is, how do we create opportunities for people to shift careers?
Yes, okay.
If I had not left Northwest State, I would probably not be the president today.
Okay.
Because it gave me the opportunity to learn new and different things, and could come back with new skills that I wouldn't have necessarily obtained had I stayed at the college. So how do we offer opportunity to employees that allow them to grow? It's the same thing you're asking about students. We need to find ways to embed them more rapidly, more quickly, more intelligently into a workforce that they can say, hey, this really is for me.
Yes.
Or early say, this is not for me. I need to switch and move into something I can enjoy.
Yeah. You know, because you really do. And I know there's no way to make that work 100% of the time. It's impossible. Right. Everybody's going to have that aha moment that they, oh gosh, that's where it is. I had it. I think most people have had it. But to be able to somehow identify early, and I think we've cookie cuttered these guys so many times nowadays. You're going to go here, and you're going to go here, and you're going to go here. Why am I going there? Just because you're going to go there. You know, it doesn't matter. You're going. You know.
We talked of having 4 grandchildren, and each of the grandsons are very different. And for one of them, in my mind at this moment, he is going to need to have more hands-on education. He is a go-getter.
Yep.
He is the one that can fix my chainsaw because Grandpa can't fix his chainsaw. And he can tell me how to run a bobcat because he knows. And that's just a part of him. And I want to celebrate that with him.
Yes, yeah. No doubt. I think that's critical. And education, no matter what it is, I think is critical. You can't stop learning at 17.
And that's the other thing. We cannot continue to always front-load education.
Yes.
You know, what's the advantage of coming back to a college at a 30 or 40 or 50? What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
You know, I'm getting close to 70. There's some courses I wouldn't mind taking.
Yeah.
This technology thing, I don't have it down pat yet.
Isn't that amazing? I don't either. You know, I do think that Ken Rieker does. I think that, you know, Ken is the wizard of all things. And then Eric Herman shortly behind him, I would say. But he's learning from the master at this point in time. Is that the biggest change? I mean, technology, is that one of the biggest things you've seen?
Technology is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Also, we are a much more affluent society, and we expect more. And this is not true at Northwest because obviously we don't have dorms. But the dorm that I enjoyed as a freshman in college is not the dorm of expectations for our students today.
Sure, sure. Let's talk about that, because we talked about it before we went on air, and I do think this is and I love the answer that you had, because I have always tried to figure out why in the world in 1976, when I spent $2,000 room and board and the whole works at Ohio University, okay, and went through 3.5 years for $7,000, okay, why does a young person right now who's 18 years of age goes to Ohio University again, lives the same experience that I did, comes out with a $25,000 a year? Because I wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, Doc, I'll tell you that. So there wouldn't have been many scholarships for me. I'd been paying full boat, and they come out with approximately $100,000 in debt. What's happened, and what are the costs that these universities are seeing that would justify that kind of an increase over that time?
From the classroom side, we have technology everywhere.
Yeah.
From a smart board to computers to everything needs to function. But on the back side of that, the whole administrative structure is set up on a platform of computers. That is not cheap.
Sure.
Then if I look at the living side, we don't live in dorms with a dorm mate that is basically a very small room with showers down the hall.
Yes.
Now we have climbing walls and ski trips and many more, I think, positive ways of interacting that just weren't a part of our life
Yes.
in the 70s.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
And the expectations that our sons and daughters and grandchildren take with them going to college, this is what they've grown up with, so they assume they're going to have a room of their own and possibly their own bathroom and their car and so forth.
Yeah.
We didn't have cars.
Yeah, no, freshman year especially, there were no cars allowed at Ohio University.
Allowed, yeah. I mean, even if you had one, you couldn't take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
living has very much changed.
Yeah.
And then I think of my first teaching contract was $4,200. That served me well.
Sure.
But that's not what people are paid today.
Yeah, yeah. Is it something that you think they'll ever get a handle on? Will it ever hit a ceiling where they say, we can't charge that much anymore?
Well, the state has really been working on that, and under the current governor, we have had restrictions on tuition increases, and for 5 years we were not allowed to increase our tuition.
Sure.
So the state subsidy was not increasing, and the tuition was not increasing, so you just literally had to tighten your belt.
And that really had it for you especially, because when they say that, again, if you're going to OU, room and board went up, okay,
Right. Yeah.
But tuition stayed the same. But tuition, in a lot of cases, is the lesser of the two of those
Yeah.
expenses. If I remember right, it's probably 40% to 60%, something in that ballpark. Tuition at 30 to 40%, and room and board the rest of that.
Yeah. What we had to do was obviously tighten our belt. We also had to look at the third leg of the stool. If you think of tuition as one leg, state subsidy as a second leg, the third leg then became work that we do with grants, grant funding, and also workforce development.
Okay, all right.
Workforce development was just a huge growth factor for us.
Yeah.
So 50% of our students are connected with business and industry in Northwest Ohio, plan to stay in Northwest Ohio, and how do we raise that educational bar so that businesses do better because the employment and educational level of their employees.
Yes. Are you happy with that? Are you happy with that end of the business, as should we call it? Huh?
Well, it's interesting. When Larry McDougall was president, he sent me to a 4-day seminar on workforce development, and I came back and said, Dr. McDougall, if we're going to be successful, we have got to have at least 50% of our students from workforce development, and right now we have 10. And he said, Tom, I think that's a great idea. Why don't you work on that? So he was right. It needed to be done, and we are at 50%. I'm not saying that it needs to stop, because at one point the pendulum may swing back, and it'll be more straight educational focus, and
Sure.
people will be interested in their bachelor's more. But right now, as a community college, it's 50-50,
Yeah.
and that's key.
Yeah. And that's where the jobs are at this point
That's
in time.
yes, and from a state perspective, that's how the state is seeing education leads to a job.
Yes.
And if it's not leading to a job, we are paid part of our subsidy on student success, which is a job,
Okay.
and completion. And that's also difficult for community colleges. Over 70% of our students are part-time. Now, that's a compliment to Northwest Ohio, because many of our students do not want to go into debt, and they want to take the classes as they can pay for them, and or they have families, they have jobs, they have life outside of education. So they're blending education in when they can. But when you have 70% of your students taking half a load, that means instead of 2 years, it's going to take them 4 years.
Yes.
The state thinks that they are not successful because they didn't complete within a time pattern. They completed. They are successful. They have been successful all the time that they were working, going to school, taking care of the family, being part of a community, and being productive.
Yeah, that's that leads us to a great spot. Okay.
Yeah.
How is the state to deal with right now, and what are that's obviously one. I mean, you know, for you to be, or when you're penalized, do they keep funds, withhold funds, or how do they penalize you for a student who couldn't make it through in 2, it took him 3.5?
Yeah. In the past, when I started as president, we were paid on a 14-day count.
Okay.
So if the student was there and present, you had earned the subsidy. And it didn't really matter from a state perspective, unfortunately, if the student dropped out on the 16th or the 21st day,
Sure.
because the money was, quote, earned. Now, a good portion of that subsidy is based on the student completing with a D or better. Now, we don't always consider D as being successful, but they did complete the course.
Sure.
And then did they graduate within time and a half? So if it's a 2-year degree, time and a half would be 3 years.
Okay.
Well, we often lose some points on the time and a half because many of our students will be 4 or 5 years out
Sure.
before they complete.
Yeah.
But the state funding has very much endorsed exactly what you're saying. We will pay for success.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so that's very different.
Okay. Yeah. How they changed? I mean, that's one way that they've changed. But other things that have changed with the state and the relationship of with a community college in your tenure.
The one area that I'm very cognizant of is having advisors for students. The governor talked about literally having a menu, a roadmap, so that if I start at point A and I get to point D, I have completed the steps and I know exactly what is required. Remove electives, remove options. You're moving from step A to step B. And simplify it and get that information out. Northwest State was extremely fortunate. We received a Title III grant from the federal government that has funded this department that works with the students in setting up these advising appointments. And our goal is that when a student starts with their advisor, which is from the Title III Advising Center and their faculty advisor, there is a plan in place that will say you're a part-time student, you're a full-time student, you want to take 2 classes a semester, whatever. There is a plan in place that gets them to the end. You need to always be able to focus on the end, and the end needs to be in sight.
Yeah, yeah. Is it possible then to tie that to the performance?
Yes, it does.
At this point in time?
Yeah,
Okay.
because we'll be showing to the state that, yes, this student was successful, even though
very good.
it was longer than the time and a half or 3 years.
You know, if you're trying to have a family and maybe a job, and now trying to better yourself with
That's
a
exactly
class,
right.
Every semester you're going to get 1 or 2, maybe if you got the ability to, but to juggle all that, you're going in thinking you're a 5-year plan.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So you are 100% successful. You met your goal.
You have been successful, and not only you, but your family and all that support group that is there with you.
Yes.
We just had the fall graduation a couple of weeks ago, and it's always exciting to see the families there to support their sons and daughters, or grandchildren, or grandpa and grandma.
Yeah, there's no doubt, no doubt about that. All right, it's time to pay a couple of quick bills here. Again, I need to step away. Dr. Tom Stuckey is our guest right now, the president, outgoing president, I guess is the way they term that now, huh? Outgoing president.
That's true.
That's something that you got to live with a little bit too.
Yep.
Does that resonate a little bit when you hear something like that?
It's a different statement. Yeah, it's different.
It is. Well, but again,
it's true.
You've been around for quite a while, and to walk away, I'm sure there have been times when you've thought about what's it going to be like. That last time that I take my key out of the door and hand it over to somebody and hop in my car and go home. And when I come back Monday morning, if it's 3 months from now to teach or whatever it might be, things are different.
Things are different.
And
That's right.
it's something that people don't understand. People always say, "Oh, retirement."
Yeah.
You're going to go. You're on vacation right now, but it's not quite as easy as that, is it?
It is not. It's hard to walk away from something you have thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, it really is. With that, we'll walk away from something that I'm thoroughly enjoying right now. That's a conversation with Dr. Tom Stuckey. Pay a couple of bills. When we come back, we will wrap things up here on part of the educational program here on a Tuesday morning on the Q.
4 generations of the
Final 10, 15 minutes here of the educational program on a Tuesday morning with Dr. Tom Stuckey from Northwest State Community College, the president of NSCC. That's a different one too. You go to all of the abbreviation nowadays, Tom. That's a change that's happened since you've been around.
That's right. This is our third name change. 2005, I believe, is when we became Northwest State and became the community college.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Before we move into some of the things that I know we want to cover before we get out of here, answer me this: How do you guys relate nowadays with the feds? We talked about the state. Okay. You hear an awful lot about where are we going on a federal level with funding education. Yep. Where are we at?
We did become a community college before '05. It was more like in the 80s. The federal change is, what are we doing more in workforce development? And it ties back to our earlier conversation. How do we get a student engaged into a profession earlier in their career so that when they complete, they know this is for me?
Yes.
And they don't walk away from the 4 years saying, I must have chosen the wrong major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a big push there. So again, student success and student completion at a federal government level is key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funding right now, you mentioned a federal grant.
Right.
Okay. Are there options out there for a community college to continually renew that grant or get new grants?
During the recession of a few years ago, there was actually more money flowing in to support the students. Mm-hmm. The money is tighter. Federal financial aid has become a bit more restrictive. I was shocked to learn that if you or I made a mistake in our college program in the 70s by flunking classes or by not showing up,
yes,
that is still on our record.
Really?
Yeah, so
whoops.
That's a long time.
That is a long time.
So if a student at 18 messes up,
yes,
then it's very difficult for them to reestablish themselves without having to pay out of pocket some of the costs of the first classes to show to the feds they're serious.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, that's a big change.
That is a monstrous change.
Yes.
Are you optimistic for funding from both the state and the federal sides here for the next several years, or where do you see this going right now?
If you're in education, you've got to be optimistic.
Okay.
It will be different.
Mm-hmm.
We are more actively pursuing grant funding.
Yes.
And we have been very successful. We're working with the National Science Foundation, and I think we're going to receive some significant dollars from them. And we just got to always refocus and consider where are additional income revenue sources.
Sure.
You can't balance a budget just simply by cutting expenses.
Yes.
You've got to bring up the income and control both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that changed how in the last few years? Where has that new income and revenue come from?
As we talked earlier, it came from the workforce development,
Mm-hmm.
because those are not necessarily always credit classes. They're classes designed for the employer, saying this is what my employee needs.
Okay.
So
Okay.
those are often tailor-made, taught at the company.
Yes.
And sometimes they're for college credit, but they do not necessarily have to be. But how do I help your employee move from this position to this new position that you see he or she is very capable of doing,
Yeah.
but they just need some additional experience or training?
Yeah. What a wonderful fit, because we both know that the workforce in Northwest Ohio, like everywhere, is aging.
Yes.
And there are opportunities just abundant in that field.
Yes. Over 80% of our students stay in Northwest Ohio and continue to work.
Yeah.
Just one of my frustrations is when different service organizations work hard to create scholarships and then scholarship that son or daughter to leave Northwest Ohio, and then they come back and say, we don't understand why our children aren't here.
Yes.
Well, maybe there's a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about that. And that is one of the biggest topics of conversation around our area, or any area, because it happens everywhere.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of students now that are coming as high school students. I was going to say juniors and seniors, but it's not limited to juniors and seniors for this College Credit Plus program.
Yes.
And you start to earn college credit for the courses that can be duly applied to your high school and to your college but you can have 15 to 30 hours under your belt before you even graduate from high school.
Yeah.
And we even have a few that complete their associate's degree before they graduate from high school, because our graduation is about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than the high school graduations.
Oh gosh, I wonder how that was planned.
Yeah.
I bet there was some conversation about that at one point in time. Very well, but you know what? It's so wonderful to be able to see maybe education finally starting to fit more like a glove than just taking a hammer and pounding that square peg in that round hole.
That's exactly right. And you know, we talked about the cost of education. Well, College Credit Plus is one of the big changes within the last 5 years that has made college available to high school students.
Yes. I scratch my head, Tom. I always sit here and think, how in the world would if me being the president of Ohio State University, because I want to take my alma mater out of this right now, okay, because I've got to be a bad guy now.
Okay.
How do I allow these kids to now enter my facility in my prime, away from my prime earning territory, because most of the schools, your freshman and sophomore years, oftentimes you have to live in a dorm, so that's when you have them focused for as far as cash, okay? And now I allow them to come in as a junior and maybe live off campus, and now I lose quite a bit of money. How does that continue to be profitable for me at Ohio State, at the Ohio State University?
You just simply need to think differently.
Yeah.
The legislators have put in place tags, transfer assurance guidelines. And if that course is tagged, so courses are individually tagged by a team of faculty that get together and say, this course needs to have these outcomes, this is what needs to be taught, and if your course is qualified and accepted, it is then tagged. So if you take Comp 1 at Northwest, it goes anywhere within the Ohio system for the public education.
Sure.
The state will only pay for that course once.
Yes.
So if Ohio State would say we will not accept tags, which they legally cannot, and force that student to take that course again, they would receive no subsidy. They would get the tuition, but that became a real driver. So we have every one of our courses tagged that we possibly can. It's only fair to our students, only fair to our community.
And you know, it makes sense.
Yes. Oh, yes. And so, you know, do you want to spend the money to be at a university that first year? One, you could have done some of that maybe while you were a junior or senior. Or you could do that during the summers. Or you could spend 1 year at Northwest, stay at home with the support of your family and friends, and then in year 2 or 3, go on.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start your education without incurring a great deal of cost.
No doubt. Looking back over the 28 years that you've had at the college now, Tom, any highlights that just jump at you?
I think it's the partnerships with universities and colleges. You know, we work very closely with Defiance College. We work very closely with Bluffton University. Bowling Green and Toledo have been great partners. And we continue to build those relationships because one institution is not going to do it on their own.
Yeah.
How do we collectively do education in a way that benefits the residents of Northwest Ohio?
Yeah, yeah. And if you had one thing that you could maybe sneak over to the new president and whisper in their ear before you leave, what piece of advice would they get from Dr. Tom?
Learn to say thank you, job well done, more frequently.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how little things like that still are so important in the
They are.
2018?
Yeah.
Yeah. All in all, is Tom Stuckey happy with the years that he's put in so far before he's about ready to move on to the next stage of his life?
Yes. It's amazing that when you started to teach in the fall of 70 and you realize that this is now 2018, how quickly the years have gone by.
Yeah, it is, isn't it, huh?
Yes.
And I can see in your eyes that still your family is probably the number one source of light in your entire existence.
But that's true for all of us.
Yes.
Or at least I hope it is, because they're such a gift.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tom, it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, I was looking forward to this conversation. As in life, the hour goes awfully quickly. Okay.
Oh, that is true. It's those commercials.
Yeah. If we wouldn't sell all those darn commercials, we had a little more time to talk. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for all the wonderful things that you've allowed us to do over the course of the years. And
You've been a true partner with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Tom Stuckey has been our guest. And with that, we're going to wrap up this first hour of our day and get back into some classic hits here on the Q 96.5 FM. Why don't we start out with a little music? How's that?
This music is a